In this session of our video, we are going to discuss with the last important unit of concentration, that is mole fraction, and how to calculate the concentration with respect to mole fraction also, children. So in that course, in the last two sessions, we have discussed about some important units of concentrations, that is percentage concentration, molality and normality. For normality calculation, we have also discussed about the equivalent weight calculation, and now we are going with the last unit of concentration, that is mole fraction, and further we are going to discuss about the heterogeneous type of mixtures and the different categories included in the heterogeneous type of mixtures in this video session. So let us start our today's session with the discussion of mole fraction and how to calculate its mole fraction. So now let us first define what is mole fraction. So mole fraction is also one of the unit of determining concentration, children. So mole fraction is nothing but the calculation of or particular fraction of a solute present in a total amount of solution. So its fraction we are calculating in the total amount. So how do you define mole fraction? Mole fraction is defined as the ratio of number of moles of a component to the total number of moles of all components present in a given solution. So generally a solution is made up of many components, two or many components. So in that solution, if you want to calculate the mole fraction of a particular solute or a component, then what all you have to do is you have to divide the number of moles of that particular component of the solution which you have to determine upon total number of moles of all components. For suppose we have a solution like this, a homogeneous solution. It is a homogeneous solution made up of three components respectively, that is A, B and C. So by mixing component A, component B and component C, we got this solution which is homogeneous in nature, so that it can be called a solution. So now in this solution, if I want to calculate the mole fraction which is denoted with X, mole fraction of A if I want to calculate, then what all I have to do is number of moles of A by total number of moles, means all the moles of A, B, C you have to do addition. So number of moles of A plus number of moles of B plus number of moles of C you have to do. If I want to calculate mole fraction of B, then you should take number of moles of B on numerator and whole divided by again number of moles of A plus number of moles of B plus number of moles of C. So the common formula for calculating mole fraction is for which substance or which component you have to calculate the mole fraction, that component's number of moles should be taken in the numerator and that should be divided or it should be ratioed with the total number of moles of all components present in that solution. So if you want to calculate the mole fraction of C, then what happens? Number of moles of C whole divided by number of moles of A plus number of moles of B plus number of moles of C again. So general formula for mole fraction you can write it as, so X, mole fraction X, mole fraction of a component X is equal to mole fraction of a component X is equal to number of moles of that component divided by total number of moles. So this is the common formula for mole fraction, children. What is the common formula? If you want to calculate the mole fraction of a particular component, then you should do the ratio of number of moles of that component whole divided by total number of moles. So do you have any units for mole fraction now, children? So earlier we have studied many concentration terms. What are the concentration terms we have studied in the earlier session is molarity, normality, molality. So we have learned about three, that is molarity, molality and normality. Yes, of course these will have units because they are the ratios of different quantities. When coming to molarity, it is number of moles upon volume. So its units are, what are its units, children? Moles per liter, as we have already discussed. For molality is it is number of moles by weight. So the units for molality is moles per kg. Normality is also number of equivalent weights by volume. So it can also be taken as number of equivalent moles by liter. So in that manner, all these quantities which are used to measure the concentration has units, but coming to mole fraction does not have any units. It has no units because it is the ratio of same type of quantities. So mole fraction is done by the ratio of same type of quantities, that is here also in the numerator also it is number of moles, and in the denominator also we are taking number of moles only. So it is a ratio of same quantities of different components, but so that the mole fraction will not have any units. So remember, children, mole fraction has no units. Other units of concentration or other quantities of concentration which are used to measure concentration has particular units. So in such a manner you can calculate the mole fraction of a particular component in a given solution when you know number of moles of that particular component and the number of moles of other component. So if you don't know the number of moles, then what you will do? If number of moles are not directly given in the solution or question, then what all you have to do is mole fraction is equal to number of moles of a particular component by total number of moles. So if number of moles is not given in the question, they will give you compulsory the weight of that components, weight of each and every component. Then number of moles can be calculated by weight, given weight by gram molecular weight again. So this formula we have already used in molarity. So the same formula we will use here. If number of moles of each component is not directly given in the sum, they would give you the weights. So using those weights, you have to calculate the number of moles first of all, and using those number of moles, you have to calculate the mole fraction, children. So in these two ways, they may ask you the question regarding mole fraction. And besides this, they may ask you the mole fraction of a particular component by giving the mole fraction of other component also. That means for suppose a solution A plus B, a solution contains two components, that is A plus B. It has two components A plus B, and mole fraction of A is given to you. They asked you to calculate mole fraction of B. In such a manner also they may ask you question regarding mole fraction, children. Then what all you have to do is, remember children, mole fraction of all components of solution is always equal to 1. This point you have to remember. How many components may be present in that solution? The sum of all the mole fractions of all components present in a given solution is equal to 1. Because this solution is made up of only two components, so mole fraction of A plus mole fraction of B is equal to 1. If that solution is made up of three components, then the mole fractions of all these three components is equal to 1. So what is the final point you have to conclude? Mole fractions of or you can write sum of mole fractions of all components in a given solution is always equal to 1 or unity, is always equal to 1 or unity. This is another most important point you have to remember, using which you can get the formula, or you can using this formula they will ask you the problems in your competitive exam also, children. So now I am going to write you the important points regarding mole fraction again, children. So first important point is mole fraction is the ratio of number of moles of one component divided by number of or total number of moles of all components. Therefore, mole fraction of particular A component becomes Na by N total. Mole fraction of B component becomes Nb by N total. So on. You can write any number of components. The second important point you have to remember is mole fraction is temperature independent. It does not depend on temperature. Like molality. Molality also does not depend on temperature. Molarity and normality will depend on temperature. And normality, if you take, if temperature increases, normality decreases, children. You have to remember that. And it has no units. So these points are very, very important. And sum of mole fractions of all the components in a solution. Sum of mole fractions of all the components in a given solution is always equal to 1 or unity. That means XA plus XB plus so on, how many compounds they might be present, all those sum of mole fractions should be equal to 1. So that is the another important point. And now we are going to discuss the point where the mole fraction is related to molality. So the relation between mole fraction and molality is X is equal to molality by molality plus 1000 by gram molecular weight of solvent you should take. Here it is not the gram molecular weight of solute. So you remember here we have taken the gram molecular weight of solvent, children. So this is the relationship between molality and mole fraction, children. So using this formula also they may ask you problems in your competitive exams. So all these are the formulas which are used in the problems of mole fraction related sums in your competitive examination. So here is a problem, children. Calculate the mole fraction of a solute if 58.5 grams of NaCl is dissolved in 90 grams of water. So here the weight of NaCl and weight of water are given. NaCl is the solute and water is the solvent. So their weights was given, but they asked you to calculate the mole fraction. So we have two components over here. The first component is NaCl, A component, that is NaCl, and another component, that is B, which is water, children. So we have to calculate the mole fraction of a solute. What is the solute here? NaCl is the solute. So we have to calculate the mole fraction of NaCl. So in order to calculate a mole fraction of NaCl, we need number of moles of NaCl upon number of moles of total number of moles, that is number of moles of NaCl plus number of moles of water. So we have only two components, so total number of moles is equal to number of moles of NaCl plus number of moles of water. So in order to calculate the mole fraction of the solute, that is NaCl, we need number of moles of NaCl and number of moles of water. So first we have to calculate that. So number of moles of NaCl, how we can calculate? It is equal to given weight of NaCl upon gram molecular weight of NaCl. What is the given weight of NaCl? 58.5 grams upon NaCl's molar mass is, sodium's molar atomic mass is 23, chlorine's atomic mass is 35.5. So total it is 58.5 again. So 58.5. So this divided by this is 1. So number of moles of NaCl is 1. Now we are calculating the number of moles of water. So number of moles of water is equal to 90 upon, here you have to calculate given weight of water divided by gram molecular weight of water. So given weight of water is equal to, given weight of water is equal to 90 upon gram molecular weight of water. H2O formula is 2 hydrogens, 2 plus 1 oxygen, 16. So total it is 18. So 18. So 18 cancels in 90 how many times, children? 5 times, it is exactly 90. So 5 times. So number of moles of water is 5. So now we want mole fraction of NaCl. So mole fraction of NaCl is equal to number of moles of NaCl by total number of moles, that is number of moles of water plus number of moles of NaCl. So number of moles of NaCl we got 1 divided by, again total number of moles of NaCl is 1 plus number of moles of water is 5. So it is 1 by 6. So 1 by 6 means 0 point in 10, how many times does the 6 cancels? 1 time, 4 is left. So in 40 how many times? 6 6 is 36, so 6 times, 4 is left again. So 6, in such a manner it will continue. So NaCl, mole fraction of NaCl is equal to 0.166. So what all I have to conclude from this sum is, children, if number of moles are not given directly in order to calculate the mole fraction, they would give you the weights of particular solute and solvent present in that solution. So using that weights you have to calculate the number of moles and then you have to calculate the mole fraction of that particular component, children. So with this we have completed the discussion of units of concentration, children. Now we are switching on to the different types of heterogeneous mixtures. Up to now we have discussed about the solutions which are one of the category of mixtures, that is homogeneous mixtures. Now we are switching on to the other category of mixtures, that is impure substances, that is heterogeneous mixtures. So now we are going to discuss about heterogeneous mixtures. So these are the impure form of matter in which the components of the mixture are not thoroughly mixed with each other. So such type of mixtures are called heterogeneous mixtures. These heterogeneous mixtures can be categorized into two types again. Those are colloids and suspensions. So colloids and suspensions. This categorization of heterogeneous mixture into two components, that is colloids and suspension, is done basing on the fact that the size of the solute particles that are being dissolved in a particular solution. If the size of the solute particles is too small to be visible to our naked eyes, they appear to be homogeneous, but actually they are heterogeneous. So such type of heterogeneous mixtures where the solute particles are very minute in order to be seen with our naked eyes, and that solution entirely seems to be homogeneous, but it is actually heterogeneous. Such type of heterogeneous mixtures are called as colloids. Whereas other type of heterogeneous mixtures where the solute particles are big enough to be visible differently in the solution with our naked eyes. So such type of heterogeneous mixtures which we can identify even with our naked eyes are called as suspensions. So in this suspension we can see the separate layer of the solute that is not being exactly dissolving or exactly intermixing with the solvent in the mixture. So that can be easily identified with our naked eyes, but whereas colloids, for our naked eyes, they seem to be homogeneous, but they are actually heterogeneous. This homogeneous nature is observed due to the smallest size of the colloidal particles, which is unable to be observed by our naked eyes. So colloids, these are the heterogeneous mixtures where the solute particles do not mix thoroughly, but are very small, that is between 1 nanometer to 1000 nanometers of size to be visible to our naked eyes. So they appears to be homogeneous, but actually they are heterogeneous. So they seems to be homogeneous, but they are actually heterogeneous. Example for such type of solution, you can take it as milk. If you see milk solution, it seems to be homogeneous, containing no other components in it, and they are thoroughly mixed with each other. But if you carefully observe the milk solution under the focusing of light or by scattering light upon the milk solution, then you can observe the milk particles that are being scattered in the milk solution. So those milk particles are very minute enough, very small sized enough to be observed by with our naked eyes, so that we can't see it as heterogeneous solution, but actually it is heterogeneous in nature, but seems to be homogeneous. Such type of solutions are many around us, so that we should categorize them as colloids but not as homogeneous solution. But how do you identify these colloids, or how do you differentiate these colloidal solutions from homogeneous solutions or true solutions, which we call as the other type of mixtures, that is homogeneous solutions? How do you differentiate these two? Because we can't identify them with our naked eyes. How do you differentiate these true solutions from colloidal solutions? Is just by scattering a beam of light upon the two solutions. Whenever you scatter a beam of light on these two solutions, the true solution, which is really homogeneous in nature, will pass the beam of light through it, and the other solution, which is heterogeneous but seems to be homogeneous, that is colloidal solution, scatters the beam of light that falls on it. The particles present in this colloidal solution scatters the beam of light. This process of scattering the beam of light by the colloidal particles is said to be Tyndall effect. That effect is said to be Tyndall effect, which is an identification in order to differentiate the colloidal particles from true solutions. Colloidal solutions from true solutions. That may be asked as a short answer question for you children. Tyndall effect. What is Tyndall effect? The scattering of beam of light by the colloidal particles is nothing but Tyndall effect. So this can be easily observed in our day-to-day life also, children. If you see the dust particles which are present in the air is a homogeneous mixture, and if dust is present in that air, the dust particles which are present in the air just scatter the sunlight, so that you can observe in the beam of sunlight that passes through a dark room. So whenever you observe a beam of light in a dark room, you can see small particles that scatter the beam of sunlight. So that is nothing but Tyndall effect, children, that where you can observe in our day-to-day life also. The dust particles which are present in the air, they act as colloidal particles and they scatter the beam of sunlight which falls on them. So this effect of colloidal particles, or this property of colloidal particles to scatter the beam of light that falls on them, is nothing but Tyndall effect. So using this Tyndall effect, we can differentiate the colloidal solutions from true solutions. So what are suspensions then? So suspensions are also heterogeneous mixtures where the solute particles are larger enough, that is greater than 1000 nanometers, so that they can be easily observed, differentiated in the solution. So they can be observed easily, differentiated in the solution. And another most important character of suspension is, children, if you leave the suspension for a meanwhile without disturbing it, then the two components of the solution, or which are just being together, get separated into two different layers. So that suspension can be easily separated by a simple physical method, that is filtration or decantation, whereas colloid cannot be separated by filtration or decantation. So these are the differences you can write, that is suspension can be easily separated into components, and if it is left for some while without disturbing, it differentiates into two components, whereas colloids will not differentiate like that, and suspension will not show Tyndall effect, whereas colloids will show Tyndall effect. And suspension is colloidal solution, suspension is a heterogeneous solution where the solute particles are larger enough with a size of greater than 1000 nanometers, whereas in colloidal solutions the size of the particles is between 1 nanometer to 1000 nanometers. So all these you can write as differences. And also one example, colloidal solutions example is milk, ice cream, anything you can write, foams which we use, all these comes under colloidal solutions, gels, foams and milk, ice creams, all this comes under colloidal solution, whereas suspensions may include paints, next you can take as buttermilk solution, all this comes under what you call suspension. So if you leave paint solution for some while without disturbing it, then what happens, that will separate into two layers if you ever observe it. Similarly buttermilk solution also, if you take children, if you leave it for a while without disturbing it, then it will separate into two layers. So such type of solution, starch solution also you can take. So such type of solution where you can observe the separation of the components into two different layers, when you left it undisturbed for some time, can be categorized as suspensions children. So these are the two important categories of heterogeneous mixtures which comes under different categories. They may ask you the identification of different examples and categorizing different examples into suspensions, colloids and true solutions children. So in such a manner also they may ask you the bits to identify the following substances into true solutions, suspensions and colloids. So now here I am writing examples of colloids, include ice creams, foams, gels, milk, blood, all this comes under colloids. Next, examples of suspensions include starch solution, paints, next buttermilk solution, etc. So the size of the particles in colloids is between 1 nanometer to 1000, whereas in suspension is greater than 1000, whereas true solution, that is homogeneous solution, it is less than 1 nanometer children. Remember that size of the particles also. And final point regarding suspensions and colloids is, colloids exhibits Tyndall effect. So what is this Tyndall effect? Scattering of beam of light by the colloidal particles is said to be Tyndall effect, whereas the true solutions and suspensions generally do not show this Tyndall effect, so that with this Tyndall effect we can differentiate the colloidal solutions from true solutions children. So most important short answer that might be asked in your examination regarding Tyndall effect. So Tyndall effect is generally observed in colloidal solutions only. So with this we have completed the chemical classification of matter entirely, that is in our last 3-4 sessions we have discussing about the chemical classification of matter. How is matter chemically classified, children? Into pure substances and impure substances. Pure substances classification we have already studied, children, elements and their categories as metals, non-metals and metalloids, and compounds, their categories as acids, bases and salts. And coming to the other hand, impure substances or mixtures are categorized as homogeneous and heterogeneous. So till now we have discussed about homogeneous solutions or homogeneous mixtures, which are also called as solutions, and their characteristics and units which are used to measure these solutions, and their calculations we have studied. And finally we have studied about heterogeneous mixtures and their classification into suspensions and colloids and their examples. So with this we have concluded the chemical classification of matter also, children. So in our further classes we will discuss about the separation technique, how to separate all these components of solutions, whether they may be homogeneous or heterogeneous. And meanwhile a worksheet will be uploaded to you, children, in which you have different problems related to different concentration terms. So go through that worksheet, try to solve it, children, and I will just discuss the solutions of the problems that are present in the worksheet either in video classes if the time is sufficient, or I would post you the answers. Even if the video classes are not available, I would post you the answers in your WhatsApp groups along with the solutions, children. Thank you. So now finally in this session we are going to discuss about the separation techniques, children. How the mixtures, the different components of the mixtures are being separated. Most common techniques that are used as separation techniques in our different industrial purposes where we use these mixtures. So now we are going to discuss about the separation techniques of mixtures. We know that mixtures are the substances, the different components are physically mixed with each other and they remain together physically, so that they can easily be separated by using some characteristics of those components like melting points, boiling points, or some other characters, color or size, some other physical characters. These physical characters are used to separate the components of the mixtures into different components, and they are separated from the mixture. So such type of separation is nothing but separation techniques. We have many separation techniques which are applied for different types of mixtures. Now we are going to discuss the some common or commonly used separation techniques which are used in industrial purposes and some other purposes where we used in many industries or many chemical factories. These techniques were used. Some of the most commonly used separation techniques now we are discussing here. First one is hand picking. Second one is winnowing. Third one is sublimation. Fourth one is evaporation. Fifth one is separating funnel technique. Separating funnel technique. Sixth one is distillation. Seventh one is fractional distillation. And the last and most important technique is chromatography. So these are the most important techniques which are used as separation techniques in many industries in order to separate the different components of the mixtures that are obtained in their reactions or chemical processes. So first and foremost, you remember one important point, children. Not all separation techniques are suitable for all type of mixtures. So according to the mixture you have to select the separation technique that is applicable for it. And besides this, you have another technique also, children, that is magnetic separation also. So that also you can use. So now let me explain which separation technique is used for which type of mixtures. So with that, let us start with the first technique, that is hand picking, children. So this hand picking, generally we see it in our household purposes also. Generally your mother used to just pick up the stones from rice, which is nothing but a mixture. The stones that are mixed with rice is a form of mixture, heterogeneous mixture, where your mother will search the stones and pick that stones from the rice particles just by what factor, children? Yes, difference in texture, that is for seeing the stone will be different from the rice particles, and the size of the stone will be different, color of the stone will be different. So using such physical properties, if you separate the particular component from another component of a mixture just by hand, by picking with hand, the such type of separation technique is called hand picking. So hand picking is observed when one of the component or particle of mixture is bigger enough and it differs from other component either in size, color or some other physical parameter. In such case, you can use the hand picking. So the example for such case of mixtures where we use hand picking, we can write it as picking of stones from rice, similarly picking of spoiled vegetables from healthy ones. In such a manner, we generally do this in our day-to-day life, picking one unwanted substance from other unwanted substance. That all comes under hand picking only. And the second important separation technique is winnowing. This is also observed in earlier days where they used to separate the husk from grains. Generally the grains will have a layer of coating which you call husk on them. So they are very lightweight. If you separate that husk from wheat, in order to separate the dust of husk from wheat, they just used to separate that by the flow of wind. If they just shake that wheat particles in wind like this, what happens? The lighter husk particles will move away with wind and the heavier wheat particles just remain down at that particular place. So here we are separating the one of the component of the mixture with other component just due to what difference, children? Difference in their density. So that the lighter particles will move away with wind, whereas the heavier particles will settle down there. Similarly, we will separate the dust from floors which we use in our household purposes. Just we will do them like this in the air, scatter them like this in the air, so that the dust particles will the lighter dust particles will just flow away with wind and the heavier particles will remain in the plate which we are just doing as winnowing. So winnowing is applicable to the mixtures where one of the component is lighter in weight, and can be easily carried away by the wind particles. So examples where you can use winnowing for which type of mixtures is separating husk from grain, and separating dust from floors, rice flour. So in these two conditions we use the winnowing technique, where the lighter particles of the mixture are carried away by the wind and the heavier particles will remain there itself. So here the factor of separation of the components of mixture is whether they are lighter in weight or heavier in weight. So now let us go with the third technique, that is sublimation, children. We have already defined what is sublimation. Sublimation is the technique where one of the component directly converts from solid form to gaseous form. So whenever you have a mixture where one of the component is sublimizable and the other component is non-sublimizable. So the third important technique of separation is sublimation, children. So this sublimation technique is used only when the mixture contains one of the components that is sublimizable and the other component should be non-sublimizable. If both are sublimizable, it is not applicable. If both are non-sublimizable also, it is not applicable. One should be sublimizable and the other should be non-sublimizable. So this technique is applicable to the mixtures where one of the component of the mixture should be sublimizable, whereas the other component should be non-sublimizable. So examples for such type of mixtures is, children, if you take NH4Cl mixed with NaCl, these two salts are generally very similar and very close in appearance to each other. They are both white in color and the particles of both the salts are very close to each other, similar to each other to be visible as a single salt. So now if you mix these two salts with each other, how can you separate these two salts mixture is, in this mixture NH4Cl has the capability of sublimation, it is sublimizable, whereas NaCl is non-sublimizable. That means sublimizable means when we heat it over, NH4Cl directly converts from solid to vapor, whereas NaCl will convert as liquid. So that with that factor we can separate them. How do you separate these? Just what you will do is, you take a beaker of water, children, place a watch glass upon it, and now you take a mixture of NH4Cl plus NaCl in this watch glass and just invert a glass funnel upon this and close the mouth of this funnel with cotton piece over here, and now place this beaker containing water you should take Place this beaker upon a table and just heat this beaker with Bunsen burner. So now if you heat this beaker, the water in the beaker just vaporizes and that hot vapors will touch this plate, and that heat is absorbed by this mixture of salts, and that mixture of salt contain NH4Cl and NaCl, children. In this NH4Cl has the capability to sublimize whenever it is heated, so that the NH4Cl from the mixture start vaporizing like this, and when it reaches the upper part of the funnel, vapors of NH4Cl, these are vapors of NH4Cl, when they reach the upper side of the funnel, there the temperature is not as much as the temperature that is present below, so that the vapors get cooled up and they deposit as a solid substance on the walls of the funnel here. Because they have no opportunity to escape out, these vapors get cooled up there at the mouth of the funnel and they turn into solid again. Whenever the NH4Cl cools down again, it directly converts from vapor to solid, so that the solid deposit is absorbed on the walls of the funnel over here. So solid deposit of NH4Cl is absorbed on the walls of the funnel. And what is left here in the watch glass? NaCl will be left over it. So in such a manner, you can separate any two components containing in the mixture by using sublimation technique, but that technique is applicable only when one of the components should be sublimizable and other component should be non-sublimizable, children. So you can take this as an example and give. And the next important technique is, children, evaporation. So we know that what is evaporation? Evaporation is nothing but conversion of liquid form of matter into vapor form. So that process is nothing but evaporation. So this evaporation technique, this technique is applicable for solid liquid mixtures, where the liquid should be volatile in nature. Volatile in the sense that should be easily vaporizable. Then you can separate that liquid from the solid using the technique of evaporation. So example for such a solution is ink solution, children. So ink solution is generally prepared by dissolving dye in water. So this dye is a solid component, water is a liquid component, and we know that when heating, the water has the capability to evaporize or vaporize, so that the dye is left over in the solution and water will be evaporated. So the dye can be separated from water from the ink solution using the evaporation technique. Similarly, salt plus water also, common salt plus water, that is sea water, is generally used for evaporation technique only. Here NaCl, crystal NaCl will be left over and water will be evaporated. So this mixture can also be given as an example for evaporation technique, children. And the next important technique is magnetic separation, children. Magnetic separation is a technique where you can use it to separate the components of the mixture only when one of the component of the mixture is magnetic in nature. It should be magnetic in nature. So this technique of separation is applicable to the mixtures where one of the components should be magnetic in nature and the other should be non-magnetic in nature. For suppose if you take a mixture of iron fillings are very small particles, of iron we have. If they are mixed with sand, so they cannot be separated with hand by hand picking. So that iron fillings that are present in the sand can be separated by magnetic separation, children. How is, you have a just a equipment for magnetic separation which contains two wheels like this, children, and on these two wheels you have a conveyor belt like this. This belt is called conveyor belt, and you have two wheels over like this, one of which is magnetic wheel and the other one is non-magnetic wheel. Now you will take a mixture of components that are to be separated by magnetic separation and powder them and just allow to flow them through this conveyor belt. So if that mixture is allowed to flow through this conveyor belt, whenever the mixture is reached to this magnetic wheel, children, one of the component of the mixture is magnetic in nature, so that attaches to this magnetic wheel up to the point where there is contact between this conveyor belt and wheel. So up to there, the magnetic substance that is present in the mixture keeps in contact with that wheel, whereas the other component which is non-magnetic in nature just falls here itself. Because it is non-magnetic in nature, it will not have any attraction with that wheel and it will fall just like this at this here only, whereas the magnetic substances will fall at a different place where the connection is just separated for the conveyor belt and the magnetic wheel. So that we will get two heaps of substances. One of the heap is non-magnetic substance. Where the other heap is magnetic substance. In such a manner, we can separate the magnetic component of the mixture from non-magnetic component of the mixture by the physical character of magnetic nature or non-magnetic nature, children. So in this way, you can use the magnetic separation technique for a particular mixture of solutions. So the other three techniques which are left with is separating funnel technique, distillation and fractional distillation, children. Fractional distillation. So all these three techniques, that is separating funnel technique, distillation or fractional distillation, are used for, all these three are used for liquid mixtures only, liquid plus liquid mixtures only. But the differentiation is separating funnel technique is used for immiscible liquids. Immiscible liquids means the liquids which do not mix with each other. Immiscible liquids means the liquids which do not mix with each other thoroughly, that is oil and water, kerosene and water, such type of mixtures of liquids which do not mix with each other are called immiscible. Miscibility means mixing with each other. Immiscible means they do not mix with each other. So for such type of liquids we use separating funnel technique, whereas distillation and fractional distillation are used for miscible liquids. miscible liquids. So this technique, the separating funnel technique, you will separate the immiscible liquids using a apparatus called separating funnel over here. So you will have a separating funnel like this, children, with a lid over here. So you will pour the mixture of the immiscible liquids into this and just close the nozzle at the down and let it stand for some time without disturbing it. Then the two liquids which are immiscible generally separates out into two different layers when they are left undisturbed. So if you take two solutions like this, so the two solutions which are immiscible with each other generally separates out like this into two layers. Now what you will do is, first you just collect one of the liquid by just opening the nozzle, drop by drop, opening the nozzle. You just first collect the liquid one, and then whenever this liquid reaches to the last point, just close the nozzle and take out this beaker and keep another beaker and again open the nozzle in order to collect the second liquid. In such a manner you will just separate the immiscible liquids using this separating funnel. This apparatus is called, children, separating funnel. Here we have separated the immiscible liquids basing on their density difference. So you will use density character here in order to separate the immiscible liquids. One will be less denser and another will be more denser. So according to that the liquids get separated. So then you have to collect the two liquids into two different beakers using this separating funnel. Now coming to miscible liquids. So in the case of miscible liquid mixtures, we can use either distillation or fractional distillation. But when to use distillation and when to use fractional distillation is very particular, children. So that you have to remember. So distillation is used for miscible liquid mixtures. Miscible liquid mixtures where the liquids have very far difference in their boiling points. So if those two liquids that are present in the mixture will have a greater difference in the boiling point, for suppose one of the liquid is having the boiling point of 35 degrees Celsius and other is having 100 degrees Celsius. So there is a larger difference in boiling point. In such condition, you can use the distillation technique. Difference in boiling point should be greater than or equal to 25 degrees Celsius, children. Remember that if the boiling point difference of two liquids present in the mixture is greater than or equal to 25 degrees Celsius, then you can apply this distillation technique, where you will take the liquid mixture in a beaker and connect it to a condenser which is used to cool the vapors, and heat that mixture of liquids. Then what happens when you heat this liquid mixture, one of the component of the mixture which has lower boiling point will vaporize first of all, and that will pass through the condenser and gets cooled up and collected as a liquid in another beaker. So till this component of the mixture completely vaporizes, the temperature will not rise. As we know, during the state conversion there is no rise in temperature, hence entire this component of the mixture is vaporized. Till entire the component of the mixture is vaporized, the temperature will not rise up, so the other component will not have a chance to get to its boiling point. So that in such a manner we can separate the liquid mixtures using distillation or fractional distillation. So distillation is used whenever there is a difference in boiling point which is greater than or equal to 25 degrees Celsius, whereas fractional distillation is used for liquid mixtures where their boiling point difference is very less. That means they have very close boiling points to each other. For suppose if you take a component A has boiling point 90 degrees Celsius and the other component B has 100 degrees Celsius, very close relation they have, and they may be even 1 or 2 degrees Celsius difference also there might be present in the mixtures. In such a condition you should use fractional distillation, where this technique is similar to that of distillation only, but we will use a fractionating column which is used to separate this nearest boiling point liquids by a constant condensation and constant vaporization, cooling and vaporizing and cooling. Constant vaporizing and cooling technique is followed in this fractionating column, where the component with the lowest boiling point will reach to the top of the fractionating column and then condenses to form liquid. So, in order to just separate this liquids with very close boiling point, we will use this fractional distillation technique, children. And finally, we have last technique, which is most important technique, which is used to separate any kind of mixtures of mixture of components, that is chromatography, children. So, chromatography is a bit complicated technique, but I just want to explain you how the components of the mixture are separated by using chromatography, not in detail, just in a single point, children. So, chromatography is a technique where the components of the mixture are separated by using different colorization and different graphs. Equipment called chromatographers or chromatography systems, which just read this sample of components and give different colored graphs for different types of components that are present in the mixture. So, as the color components are used here, pigments of different, earlier it is used for just for pigments of different colored agents only we are using this chromatography, but nowadays this chromatography technique can be used for any type of mixtures where there is no color exhibition also. And this chromatography is an advanced technique in order to separate the component of the mixture, which is used in many pharmaceutical companies in order to separate the different components that are present in a given sample of tablet, children. So, with this we have completed the separation techniques which are commonly used to separate the mixtures also, children. Using this separation technique, they may ask you bits, like they will give you the examples of some of the mixtures and they ask you to find out which separation technique is used to just separate this type of mixture of components. In such a manner they may ask you. So, I hope all of you have understood well, and go through the worksheet which I have given to you, practice those sums which I have given in the worksheet. So, I will just either post you the answers in either a video session, or if not possible I will post you the answers or the key for that worksheet even in your WhatsApp groups as a PDF file. Hope all of you will revise the entire topic well, children, and go through the topics once again well through your running notes, and if any queries if you have, you can post it in our WhatsApp group, and prepare well for the examination which would be for you on the Thursday, children. Thank you.